Now that the radio is squared away, the next thing that we're going to tackle in the dash is these crossovers. We want to put them in here in this area where the factory radio would have been, because we have the room. These guys are kind of big. We're not going to be able to set them like this. We can go all the way back. We do have quite a bit of room. My original thought was to make a mount and then stack them on top of each other like this, but do it in a way so that the wiring goes out the side like that. What I'm looking at is having them sit like this in the dash here, and then we'll make it so that they'll screw into these factory brackets. You can pull it in and out and get the wiring down in here into the corner. So what I need to do first is figure out how big this piece needs to be, and then from there I can kind of play around with it and figure out how I want to stack those. If I go 8.5 by 7.5, that'll get me an L, and then I'll put a piece across the front. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go cut a piece of plastic. Flushed in some screws here in the front, ground off the back so they're not sticking in and they're not going to hurt you. First crossover, I'm going to mount up here towards the front, and the second crossover I want to sit just like this on top, so we have this nice stacked look. It's about 1.5 inches up. So I've cut some 1/2 inch plastic, and if I mount it like this, the only screw that won't get put in is obviously this one here in the center, but that'll give us plenty of room to slide this in, have all our wiring zip tied down and into place so that it can come down and go into the bottom. To get this mocked up, this is the tape we're using. This is Tessa tape, just skinny red kind. The reason why we use the tape is so that obviously I don't have a third hand. I can now easily manipulate this while I'm drilling in my screws. Now Rockford puts this double-sided tape on the bottom of this, and even though I love using double-sided tape for things, I don't like this because it doesn't allow this to sit flat. That means it's gotta go. There we go. This will slide into place. 2 screws here will lock it down. Now that it's all assembled, let's do one final test. We've also added a 1/8 inch spacer here with a piece of Velcro on it. That way, when it goes in, it won't ever vibrate or rattle or cause any noises. And it'll sit just like that. Now that this is all built and ready to go, I'm gonna leave this wiring for Fernando. I'm gonna head into the back and start on the amplifier rack. Now Ford in the newer F-150s puts the amplifier right here, not in that god-awful terrible spot in the center console. Apparently it's one of those cases where you live and learn. I'm sure their technicians were real happy every time that Sony amp would give them issues where they had to spend hours pulling that thing apart, servicing it, and putting it back together. Ugh, that would get old real quick. This seems like a much more reasonable place, and that's where we're gonna put our amplifiers. You okay, man? He's lost. Just use mine.
Yeah, probably. Oh, I got it.
This is shaped a little bit different than the newer F-150s, but it's close enough to that's really all that matters. On the newer F-150s, this is kind of sunk in, and this actually is open here on this. The metal still goes here, so we'll notch it here like we normally do, and we'll make a panel that covers this whole area so we can mount the 2 amplifiers, the distribution block, and still retain our vents here. Our wires need to come out this area here. We'll probably notch this so that our power wires will tuck this way. This is the power wire here. Normally we don't run it before we start on this. However, because it's going into a power distribution block, we do that sometimes to save time if Fernando's leapfrog ahead of where I'm at. All the signal wire is gonna go this way into the dash. For power distribution, we are gonna be using the Stinger SHD 820. It is a 2-hole fuse holder, and then this truck is actually made out of steel. It's not aluminum. This is before they changed them, so we can just ground it in the back like we normally would. The first step when making an amp rack, of course, is to grab a tape measure, take some measurements, figure out how big your piece of plastic needs to be, and go from there. Let's take a look at the amplifiers, because we need to get a good size on what they are and kind of get a general layout first. The first amp we want to take a look at is the T750.1. This is going to be the sub amp. It's this cute little guy right here. Now these have distortion detectors built into them. They come with a disc that has your test tones on it. That's these little lights right here in the top. It has an input RCA. And then they all come with a power cube burn-in sheet. This one's spec'd in at 1050 watts. It's incredible something this small can do that. In the box is also the instructions that explains to you how to use the disc in order to set up your distortion detector. It has a clip indicator and the output distortion detector built into it. For the highs, we're going to be using this guy here, which is the 404. This was his amplifier. The nice thing about these is they're the same size for the most part. This makes me happy. It makes installation pretty nice. On the amplifiers, they have a power plug that is removable, as well as on the 4-channel, it has speaker plugs here and input plugs here. The other thing we'll be adding too is the PLC2 subwoofer level control for the 750.1. That's going to plug into the same side as the amplifier as where your input RCAs go. This is what's going to be going in the rear of the car. It doesn't take up a ton of room. It needs to be about this much wider, so we have room for the plugs that have the RCAs on them to connect into the amplifier. And then we want to make sure this is far enough away from here so we can route the speaker wires down and the power wires up and into the amplifiers. If I have room, something like with the fuse holder low comes in like this, or possibly sit like this and come over. There's a lot of options. What I need to do now is, like I said, just get into the car and measure and cut some plastic. We have 20 inches. I think I might go vertical with these things. Maybe I can put the fuse holder. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go vertical. 13 by 20. We have a piece of plastic that's 13 by 20. Now we just need to mark the areas that need to be removed. The first one up is the corner here where the seat goes. We'll just leave this little area here and we'll cut this. And this is where we'll screw it into. We don't really need to remove this part here, but we're going to, just because it'll make this easier to screw in. We'll put a little S-bend in here to bring it closer because this is sticking out a little bit. Panel's cut. This stuff is a pain to cut. Fresh blade, great idea. This is a nutsert. A nutsert is like a rivet. Put it into the hole, you have a tool that crushes it, and it makes this a place that you can screw in, screw out, screw in, screw out as many times as you want. It screws onto your tool. Put it in the hole, squeeze it, and then unscrew it back out. They make several different versions of these depending on how you need to do it, because like this is pretty big. They make some that squeeze, and then they have pneumatic, and then they have ones that attach to the drills. Either way, these are awesome tools. They give it a really nice finished look. We can put our screw in there, and that'll hold this all in place. The one last thing I need to do is down here on the bottom, there's a channel where I want the power wire to go through. So I just need to mark that. We'll cut that, but this panel's all set. Over to the bench we go.
For the fuse holder, we make an L bracket, ABS, 1/4 inch. This gonna mount in the battery holder. We're gonna screw it in, 2 screws. This one is gonna be right in the edge. Our power wire is gonna come from the inside of this plastic. Hold it right there. We have to leave this space so they can check the oil. If we put it next to the corner, that's gonna be an issue.
This is the Fox box. You have tons of depth in the bottom of it. They use an ABS mount, which we'll show you more of once we get it flipped over and put into the truck, but they use every available inch of space, and it's ported. So this is actually the floor. That's why we recommend grills. So because this is gonna sit on the floor and you don't want any damage to happen to the woofer, like crayons or something like that gets put up underneath it. We are using the P3s. This is an aluminum cone too, which is another reason why I strongly recommend grills.
Regular woofer.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. It's a monster. Drops right in, no problems. Piece of cake.